and thank you, Monica, for the nice introduction. So maybe I present myself and also the other co-authors. So my name is Erwin Rauch. I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Science and Technology at the Free University of Bolzano-Bozen in Italy. And I worked together in this work with Thomas Goldin, who is a former student of us, and he's also working at the Technical High School in Bolzano, which is similar, for example, in Austria to the HTLs that you have there. Then in the team, there was also involved Corina Pacher from the Technical University in Graz, as well as also Manuel Woschank from the Montan University in Leoben in Austria. And the topic that we worked on is a reference architecture for having a better integration and as well as also a better synergies in the use of digital tools in Education 4.0. And as we have many academics also in our round, I think that all of you know about that, what we felt and that what we needed also to react over the last months and in the last year, especially when we changed from a completely or from a mostly analog form of doing our teaching into a completely digital format with distance learning, and all of this not in a transformation phase of several years, but we needed to do this in a very short time, therefore in a few months or in a few weeks, due to, of course, this pandemic situation where we are still seeing also the implications also in this conference. So taking a look now to these changes in the last year, we can see a lot of negative impacts, of course. There are also some positive implications that have to do with the speed of the digital transformation that we are seeing actually not only in industry, but also in the education, as COVID-19 has been also a booster for introducing digital tools in education. So while before only a few of us used maybe also video conferencing tools or other digital tools in education, we needed to adapt ourselves in a very, very short time. And this was not only very problematic for us as teachers, but in general, neither the students nor the schools or the higher education in sense of universities were really prepared for such a situation that started last year and is still going on. And that, of course, created a lot of difficulties, especially to the students, as well as also especially to the teachers, because they needed from one day to the other starting to work with a lot of different digital tools. And there, I think only to the educational landscape that we have in our region of South Tyrol here in the north of Italy, we also suffered from a quite difficult situation where all the schools had different rules or applied different rules for using also the tools. So there were situations where some of the students needed to work with WhatsApp, other needed to work with Teams, other with Zoom, as well as different other kinds of means for doing and coordinating and executing or conducting also the didactic work, the teaching. What is the outcome of such a short or of such a fast transformation towards these digital tools? So the implication was that we had a complete chaos at the beginning in using all these different kind of tools. And taking a look also on this picture, we see how many of these tools are there and what kind of different types we have. So going from the typical video conferencing tools like Teams or Zoom, there are other tools for collaboration where Slack and as well as Teams can be some examples. Then the file sharing tools, then the presentation apps, podcasts, calendar apps, the learning management systems, virtual whiteboards, and so on. So completely chaos of digital tools that we could use from one moment to the other, but there was not a real structure or real strategy behind in the different schools. So the research question that we defined last year for working out this paper was what kind of reference architecture could we use in educational institutions, with a special focus also on this technical high school where our case study is on, to fully exploit also these digital tools in Education 4.0. So now, taking a look also to the methodology, to the method that we used, we started with a literature review, seeing also what are the core elements of Education 4.0. That's something that we will see in the next slide. Then we defined also what are the categories of digital tools that we can use in education. Then Thomas Goldin did also a very good market research to see what is the different tools on the market from a proprietary side as well as also open source side that can be used by schools. We conducted then semi-structured interviews also with students and teachers at the educational institutions to identify also what are the main user needs or requirements, where they see the most potential, and how we should react, and also to develop reference architecture that can be of help for schools for setting up also the more standardized, the more integrated, and the more a system architecture with synergies between the different digital tools. And afterwards, we applied this in the case study of this technical high school, Max Valier in Bolzano, to set up there also the next steps for this internal IT architecture. So now going through the first results from the literature review, what we identified there as the core elements of Education 4.0 were these ones that you see here on the slide. So new learning formats, that we don't have only the frontal teaching, of course, but we go towards e-learning or blended learning. Another core element is also the access to learning content from everywhere and at any time. Therefore, similar to the concept of IoT, Internet of Things, we want to have access to knowledge wherever we are, and whatever is the need for our access. The access to information and knowledge in general. Then also that we try to work interdisciplinary in with our classes, that we have an individual assessment focused on skills and the learning progress, instead of only learning the single content, also to do problem solving. Lifelong learning is another core element, so that we don't stop when we have finished our bachelor degree or when we have finished our master's degree, but there's still the need to learn through the whole life, because of course things are changing. We are in a very dynamic environment, and therefore we need to adapt and to update our knowledge from time to time. Then customizable study programs, that we need to acquire competences very quickly. We need also to apply skills on real world problems, therefore to work on hands-on problems, for example, also in learning factories. And that the teacher is more a mentor than a teacher, as we know this teaching or instructing functions from the past, because actually we need something more like a tutor or mentor in our classes. So these were the core elements that we identified for Education 4.0. Then we tried to set up also a framework for categorizing the Education 4.0 tools that we can find in the market. And we have seen that there are tools for content management or learning management, so the LMS systems. We have video conferencing tools. We have tools for our exams. So we all know how difficult it is to grade our students when we are doing distance learning. And therefore, a lot of us used also digital tools for doing the exams. Then data exchange and cloud tools, collaboration tools like virtual whiteboards or similar, game-based learning tools, digital libraries or databases where students can look up for information, then maybe also specific software for lab exercises or for simulation tools. And the last two that we have this here, the digital white or chalkboard tools, as well as the digital gradebook, where we have then also all the documentation of the study progress of our students. So this was the categories. This has been the framework for the categories that we built. And based on these categories, we did also a market research, which are the most used or appropriate tools also that can be used in each of these different categories. And what we have seen, because I don't want to speak now about all these tools, this is something that we can look up also in the paper. But I would like to mention also that there are open source systems and there are proprietary systems. And we see still that not in all the categories we have maybe the right open source systems, which is something that we have seen also with the schools, which is a big issue because, of course, schools have a certain budget, and all these systems, if we are setting up all the landscape that we see here, has also a certain cost. Therefore, open source systems are also something quite important in this regard. Then we conducted interviews with students as well as with teachers to identify the user needs. So you see here only one excerpt of some of these results regarding the user needs. We used this information then also to work on our reference architecture, as well as also the interviews regarding the potential of the single education for zero concepts, as well as digital tools, where we analyzed which kind of tools have also the highest potential according to the users and as well as also to the instructors. Which ones where we have also a very common meaning, where maybe the meaning is a little bit more differentiated, but we can see also here from the standard deviation. And we used this together with the barriers that we identified in the interviews, also for setting up then afterwards this reference architecture. So to spend only few words to the barriers for introducing education for zero, we have seen that there's, of course, a certain time problem because the schools needed to adapt very quickly, and basically they need more time to do this in a very structured way. Then very often in the schools, we have teachers that do not want to change something because why change a working system? It's something that we know also from the companies when introducing a new stuff. So also there, we need to deal also with management issues in sense of change management. Then there are really uncertainties also about data protection laws. So I think that in general, in a lot of situations, we are still in a gray zone regarding the privacy and the data protection, especially when we do also recording of lectures. Another barrier was, of course, also the lack of financial resources, the lack of knowledge about digitalization in general and about these digital tools, and also that the students itself need also to take over certain personal responsibility for studying by themselves without the physical presence of a tutor or of an instructor. So this was basically the work that we have done to come up with this reference structure or architecture for high schools, where we have at the bottom institutional backbone with a server structure, with an operating system, with office tools and cloud systems. So this is, let's say, the basic requirement for setting up such a structure. And then afterwards in these pillars, we defined the pillar for teaching, for learning, as well as for assessment. And in teaching, we need tools for like digital whiteboards. We need video conferencing tools. We need something where students can easily collaborate together. We need virtual remote lab tools. While in the learning, we need also more the learning platforms for offering the online courses. Game-based learning is an issue. Digital libraries and databases where we have a certain link or an access to these databases, as well as project-based learning is here an important issue. And for the assessment, exam software needs to be selected very carefully. Real-world problems need to be addressed in the assessment also. A certain self-assessment should be provided also to the students for evaluating also, of course, the courses. And then the how we can analyze also the students' engagement during their self-study. So these are important elements in this kind of structure. At the top, we have then the grading, the digital gradebook, which is documenting the whole study career of our students. And on the very top, you see there are also some administrative issues like the video conferencing for internal use, for meetings, the integration of the digital calendar, as well as also collaboration tools for collaborating with other teachers.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I have to tell you, you have to finish your slides. So
thank you for the info. So I try to be quick. So here you see a picture where we analyzed also the needs for system and data integration, which is of course a big issue when you're then integrating these IT systems. We try to develop for this technical high school in Bolzano then a case study application where this will be now the future landscape of IT systems that they have set up based on this reference architecture with learning management systems, as well as all the other IT tools around there for the teaching, for the grading, for the learning. And finally, in this case study, we defined also the roadmap for implementing this, where we defined 1 year and not only some months for school, because that's an important process. And regarding the benefits and limitations, maybe we take a look to the limitations. It's still a software landscape that is developing. Therefore, there's the need to always look on new digital tools that are coming up, because software is changing constantly. And maybe some software technologies are already in development and are in the early stage. And therefore, we need to keep an eye on the software market also on that side. To conclude, we see that digital education is a booster if we can integrate it and have a more efficient learning experience for the students. But this needs also a certain structured way of creating this IT landscape behind, where we suggest our reference architecture to improve the quality. And what we need for the future is, of course, more validation in sense of applications and real case studies of this kind of reference structure architecture. So thank you very much for your attention and for the time. And if there are any questions, I'm here for answering to your questions.